All right, so today we're going depth on authentication and authorization.
Ah, yes, the digital gatekeepers.
Exactly. You know, deciding who gets in online and, more importantly, what they can do once they're in.
Absolutely. And to help us explore this, we're looking at the work of Bert Blevins.
Yeah. Bert Blevins, tech entrepreneur, cybersecurity expert. We're pulling from his work at Delinea.
Delinea, a leading cybersecurity company.
Yeah, and also his very informative YouTube channel, so.
What's great about Delinea is they really see authentication and authorization as two sides of the same coin.
Right, so it's not enough to just verify who you are. It's about what you can do once you're in.
Exactly. It's like having a library card.
Yeah, it gets you in the door.
Right, but then you need specific permissions to access certain archives or restricted sections.
So Delinea breaks it down like this.
They use the term authentication, or auth-n, to confirm your identity.
Okay.
And then authorization, or auth-z, that dictates what you can access.
So auth-n and auth-z.
Right. And they offer a whole range of authentication methods.
Like what?
Passwords, multi-factor authentication,
Yeah.
MFA biometrics, even security tokens.
So passwords are like that first line of defense.
Yeah, but as we all know, they can be vulnerable.
So that's where MFA comes in.
Exactly. Adding that extra layer of security.
Like adding a deadbolt to your front door.
That's a good analogy.
But what about biometrics, like fingerprints and facial recognition?
Yeah.
Aren't there some privacy concerns there?
That's a great point. And, it brings up a key thing that organizations have to think about.
Yeah.
It's finding that balance between security and user experience.
Mm-hmm.
And biometrics are very convenient and they're secure, but they do come with those privacy implications.
Yeah, for sure.
And Delinea seems to address this with customizable authentication profiles.
Okay, so organizations can kind of tailor the security to their specific needs and risk tolerance.
Exactly. It's not one size fits all.
I like that.
Yeah, so for example, you think about a financial institution handling very sensitive data.
Yeah.
They might use a multi-layered approach.
Requiring a strong password, followed by a one-time code sent to a registered device, and then maybe even a biometric scan for like high-value transactions.
Right, so really layering the security based on the level of risk.
Exactly.
Makes sense, but this is where authorization comes in, right? Like
Right.
once I've proven who I am, what determines what I can actually do within a system?
Right, and this is where Delinea really emphasizes RBAC,
RBAC?
role-based access control. So it assigns permissions to certain roles within an organization.
Okay, so like an intern, a manager, and a CEO would all have different levels of access.
Exactly, based on their responsibilities.
So this simplifies things on the admin side.
It does, and it also helps enforce that principle of least privilege.
Oh yeah, the idea that users should only have the bare minimum access to do their jobs.
Exactly, like giving someone a key to the supply closet, but not to the entire building.
Perfect analogy.
But Delinea takes it a step further.
Oh wow, how so?
They also implement PBAC,
PBAC.
policy-based access control. So this allows for even more dynamic and context-aware decisions.
Oh, interesting.
So instead of just relying on those predefined roles,
Yeah.
PBAC considers things like user attributes, location, even the time of day.
So it's like a security system that can adapt to different situations.
Exactly.
That's really cool. Can you give me like a real world example?
Sure. Let's say you're accessing a company's financial system.
Okay.
During business hours, you might have full access, to view and edit data.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of those hours, maybe you're only allowed to view reports, but you can't make any changes.
Right, so it's tailoring that access based on the context.
Exactly, and minimizing that risk.
Smart. Okay, so we've got this system where Delinea is combining different authentication methods, customizing access based on roles and policies.
Right.
It seems pretty robust,
Yeah.
but didn't they also use some specific authentication protocols?
Yes, they do.
I saw something on their website about OAuth, SAML, and OIDC.
You're right, and those are actually key elements in how modern systems handle authentication securely.
Okay, break those down for us.
Okay, so OAuth is all about letting you grant access to your data on one website,
Okay,
but without having to share your actual password with another website.
got it.
So think about when you log into a service using your Facebook or Google credentials.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
That's OAuth in action.
Oh, wow.
And it's much more secure than creating, separate accounts for everything.
That makes sense. What about SAML and OIDC?
So SAML and OIDC are kind of like the unsung heroes of single sign-on,
Okay.
like SSO.
Okay.
They allow you to log in once and then access a bunch of different applications without having to re-enter your credentials every time.
Oh, that's great for user experience.
It is.
And it probably reduces the risk of people using weak passwords passwords or reusing the same password.
Exactly.
So they streamline the whole login process but keep things secure.
Exactly.
I see how Delinea is really weaving all of this together,
Yeah.
for a truly layered and comprehensive approach to security.
And what's really interesting is that Delinea actually integrates the authorization right into that authentication process.
Ooh!
Yeah, it's like they're making those access decisions in real time based on context and risk assessment.
So it's not just about checking your ID at the door. It's like having a security guard who knows your history and can predict your next move.
Well, maybe not that advanced,
Okay.
but it's getting there. Delinea calls it adaptive authentication and authorization.
Adaptive authentication.
Yeah, it's dynamically adjusting those security requirements based on your risk profile and your behavior.
So the system's constantly learning and adapting.
Exactly.
Like a security system that gets smarter over time.
Right. So, for example, imagine you're trying to access a sensitive system from a new location or a new device.
Okay.
The system might flag that as unusual behavior
Yeah.
and require you to verify.
Mm-hmm.
It could be anything from a push notification to your phone or answering security questions,
Okay.
maybe even providing a biometric scan.
So it's like the system is always on high alert, but it knows when to ramp up security based on the situation.
Right.
This is getting really fascinating.
It is, and Delinea doesn't stop there.
Oh, wow.
They also use session management and re-authentication for any sensitive operations.
So even if someone was snooping on your session, they couldn't actually do anything important without re-verifying?
Exactly. It's like a double-check system.
Okay, so we've talked about Delinea's multi-layered approach to authentication and authorization, their use of RBAC and PBAC, how they integrate that with advanced authentication protocols and adaptive security.
Yeah, a very comprehensive approach.
And what really stood out to me was their emphasis on just-in-time permissions.
Yes, just-in-time
It
permission.
seems it's such an elegant solution, in today's world.
It is. It's like giving someone a temporary backstage pass to a concert.
Oh yeah, they have access for a limited time and for a specific purpose.
Exactly. So let's say you have a contractor that needs access to your network to do a project. Instead of giving them permanent access, which would be a huge risk
Yeah.
if their credentials were compromised,
Yeah.
you give them just-in-time permissions.
Okay.
So they only have access to the resources they need,
Mm-hmm.
and only for as long as the project lasts,
So once the project is done, their access is revoked.
automatically.
It's like giving them a key to a specific room,
Right.
but only for as long as they need to be in there.
Exactly.
That's really smart. It minimizes the window for any potential breach.
Exactly. And it reduces that burden on the IT team of constantly having to grant and revoke access.
For sure, but with such time-sensitive access, you've got to have really good monitoring.
Absolutely.
You need to know who's accessing what and when.
Right.
But before we get into monitoring and auditing, I want to take a step back and talk about the benefits of this integrated approach that Delinea uses.
Yeah.
What are the takeaways for organizations trying to improve their security?
Well, the obvious one is better security. Combining strong authentication with smart authorization makes it much harder for attackers to get in.
Like building a fortress with multiple layers of defense.
Exactly.
But beyond just feeling safe,
Yeah.
are there any other tangible advantages?
Oh, for sure. One of the big ones is improved compliance,
Okay.
because with the detailed logs and audit trails, you can prove that you're following those industry regulations, protecting that sensitive data.
Especially important in healthcare and finance.
Exactly where data privacy is critical.
So it's not just about feeling safe, it's about proving it.
Right.
And I imagine this also helps with the user experience.
It does, despite all the security measures. Delinea prioritizes making things easy for users.
Okay.
They leverage things like single sign-on adaptive authentication and context-aware authorization to make things really seamless.
Right, because what good is a secure system if it's too complicated for anyone to use?
Exactly.
And another advantage, I imagine, is that Delinea's solutions integrate with what organizations already have.
Yes, like Active Directory.
So they don't have to rip and replace everything.
They can build upon what they already have.
Okay, so they've really thought about making it easy to adopt these solutions.
Yes,
Very impressive.
it is.
But I do want to hear more about the monitoring and auditing.
Yeah.
Especially in those just-in-time environments.
Of course.
How do they make sure that everything's running smoothly and securely when access is so dynamic?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Monitoring and auditing are like the watchdogs of the security world.
Okay.
They're constantly making sure everything is in order.
So that's what we'll dive into next.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, so we're back and ready to dig into monitoring and auditing.
Yeah, the behind-the-scenes stuff that keeps those digital fortresses secure.
Right, and it seems like Delinea really emphasizes this, especially with those just-in-time permissions.
Oh, absolutely. Think of it like this monitoring is like having security cameras all over your digital space.
Okay, constantly observing, looking for anything unusual or suspicious.
Exactly. And auditing is kind of like reviewing the footage after an incident.
Right, so you can see who accessed what and when and what they did.
It's about creating a record so you can trace back events and see if there are any vulnerabilities.
So monitoring is the real-time surveillance,
Right.
and auditing is the investigation after the fact.
Yeah.
Both crucial for security.
Especially with those just-in-time permissions.
Right, you gotta be extra vigilant.
Like that backstage pass analogy.
Yeah, you'd want to know who used it when they went in and out, what they did back there.
Exactly.
So how does Delinea handle this in those just-in-time environments?
Well, traditional methods just can't keep up anymore.
Right, too much going on.
Exactly, especially with everything moving to the cloud and people working remotely.
Much data.
So that's where automation comes in.
Okay.
Delinea and a lot of other companies are using things like machine learning and AI to automate a lot of that monitoring and auditing.
So it's like having a super efficient security team that never sleeps.
Exactly. They can sift through tons of data and alert you to anything suspicious.
Sounds pretty amazing, but how does it actually work?
Well, these systems can analyze user behavior and see if there are any patterns that deviate from the norm.
Okay.
So, for example, if someone suddenly starts accessing files they never have before,
Yeah.
or if they log in from a strange location, the system flags it as a potential risk.
So it learns what's normal for you and then alerts you if something seems off?
Right, like a digital guardian angel.
But what about false positives?
Good question. That's something that security people are always working on.
Yeah.
You know, the systems are designed to minimize those. But it's still important to have human analysts double check everything.
Right, so it's not about replacing humans, it's about giving them the right tools.
Exactly. It's about making them more effective.
Like a security guard who's always on duty but has high-tech equipment to help them.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And it frees up the security team to focus on the real threats.
Yeah, investigate and develop strategies. But beyond responding to threats, it seems like this can help with compliance, too.
Oh, absolutely. You know, those regulations like GDPR and K4.
Yeah, they have strict rules.
Exactly. And companies need to be able to prove they're doing everything right. Monitoring and auditing gives them the proof they need.
So it's not just about feeling safe, it's about proving it to the regulators.
Right.
So it seems like these processes really check a lot of boxes.
We do.
But are there any downsides or challenges?
Well, one of the big ones is the sheer amount of data.
Yeah, I can imagine.
As companies use more cloud services and everything's connected. It's just overwhelming.
Right. You need some serious infrastructure to handle all of that.
Exactly. And the right tools to analyze it.
It's like trying to drink from a fire hose.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Another challenge is finding that balance between security and privacy.
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one.
It is. You need security, but you don't want to infringe on people's privacy.
Especially with all the data we're generating these days.
So companies need to be transparent about what they're doing.
Right. And why?
And they need to make sure they're only collecting what's absolutely necessary.
So it's about being responsible with the data.
Exactly. Using it for good and not crossing those ethical lines.
So you need technical expertise, legal knowledge, and ethical awareness.
It's a lot to juggle.
It is, but it sounds like a really important role.
It is.
So we've talked about how it works, the tech, the challenges, but I also want to talk about why it matters.
Okay.
Why should companies invest in all of this?
It comes down to risk management.
Okay.
Cyber attacks are getting worse all the time.
Yeah, they're constantly evolving.
Right. And the consequences can be devastating.
For sure.
Financial losses, reputation damage, lawsuits.
That's a lot.
So monitoring and auditing helps you identify and manage those risks.
Like having a security system for your house.
Exactly. You're investing in peace of mind knowing that you're protected.
And these days, our digital lives are so connected to our real lives.
Right.
So cybersecurity is everyone's problem.
It's a business issue, a societal issue, a personal issue.
That's powerful, and it shows how important it is to take this seriously.
Yeah, invest in the right tools and processes.
And as technology keeps changing, this will only become more important.
Absolutely. Monitoring and auditing will be key to any security strategy.
But before we wrap up, I want to touch on something you mentioned earlier
Yeah.
about human expertise.
Right.
There's so much talk about automation these days.
There is.
But what role do humans still play?
Well, automation is great for handling all that data, but it's just a tool.
Right.
It's the humans who bring the context,
Yeah.
the intuition, the critical thinking.
Okay.
They make sense of the data and make the decisions.
So it's not humans versus machines. It's humans and machines working together.
Exactly. You need both.
Like detectives working with a supercomputer.
That's a great analogy. The computer processes the information, but the detectives solve the case.
And this partnership will only become more important as security systems get more complex.
I agree.
So what skills do security professionals need to have to thrive in this world?
Well, first, they need to be really good at analyzing data.
Okay.
They need to understand it, interpret it, find the patterns. They also need to know all about security principles and best practices.
So tech savvy and data savvy and security savvy.
Exactly. And don't forget the soft skills.
Oh, right. Like what?
Communication, collaboration, being able to explain things to both technical and non-technical people.
So being a translator.
Yeah, and being able to work well on a team.
Makes sense. And I bet being adaptable and willing to learn is important too.
Absolutely. This field is always changing.
Yeah, new threats all the time.
So you have to be a lifelong learner, always learning new things.
Okay, so it's not just what you know, it's how you learn.
Right.
Well, with that in mind, I think it's time to shift gears a bit
Okay.
and look at some real-world examples.
Yeah,
How is this being used in different industries?
good idea.
Because as we've said, cybersecurity affects everyone.
It does. And one area where monitoring and auditing is becoming really important is in the cloud.
Oh yeah, that makes sense with so much of our data and our apps moving to the cloud.
Exactly.
We need strong security there.
Right. And those big cloud providers like AWS, Azure, GCP,
Yeah, I've heard of those.
they offer a lot of monitoring and auditing tools.
Okay.
So you can track what's happening in your cloud account, identify any risks, prove that you're following the rules.
Like a security dashboard for your cloud.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay.
You can see everything and get alerted to any issues.
Very cool. And I bet it helps with costs too.
It does. You can see what resources you're not using and save some money.
Oh, a win-win.
Exactly. But cloud security can be tricky.
Yeah, because you're trusting someone else with your stuff.
Right. So you have to pick a good provider.
One with a good track record.
Yes. And you need to set it up correctly and use the right security controls.
So do your research, choose the right partner, and take responsibility for your own security,
That's the key.
even in the cloud.
Yes. And beyond the cloud, this is important in other industries too.
Like healthcare, finance, even manufacturing?
Exactly.
Can you give me some examples?
Sure. In healthcare, it's all about protecting patient data.
Yeah, that's sensitive stuff.
They use these tools to control access to medical records, track who's seen what, and prevent any leaks.
Okay.
Some even use biometrics to verify the doctors and nurses.
So it's about protecting that information at every level.
Exactly. And it can help improve patient care, too.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, some hospitals are using those wearable devices,
Yeah.
to monitor patients and alert doctors if there's a problem.
Oh, wow.
It can help prevent things from getting worse.
That's amazing. So this technology can actually help save lives.
It can, and in finance, they use these tools to stop fraud and money laundering.
Okay.
So they track transactions, flag anything suspicious, and make sure they're following all of the anti-money laundering rules.
So like a financial detective.
Exactly. And even in manufacturing, it's becoming more important.
Really? Why is that?
Well, because more and more of their equipment is connected to the internet.
Oh, right.
So they need to monitor those systems, protect their secrets, and make sure everything runs smoothly.
So it's about protecting critical infrastructure.
Exactly.
It's incredible how this applies to so many different areas.
It really shows how important cybersecurity is in our world.
It's not just for the IT guys anymore.
Everyone needs to be aware of it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive on monitoring and auditing,
Yeah.
I want to leave everyone with a final thought.
Okay.
These processes are crucial for protecting everything.
Absolutely.
Our data, our systems, our organizations.
Right.
But they also bring up some big questions
About what?
about privacy ethics and how we use technology.
That's a good point. As we rely more on data, we need to make sure we're using it responsibly.
Right.
We need security and privacy, and we need humans involved in the process.
So it's not just about building smarter systems.
It's about building ethical ones.
Exactly. And that
Yeah.
takes all of us working together.
It does technologists, policymakers, ethicists, and the public.
Okay, well, I think that's a perfect place to stop.
Thank good.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights.
It was my pleasure.
I learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners did too.
I hope so.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the theory. the nuts and bolts of authentication and authorization.
Yeah, and those processes for monitoring and auditing.
But I'm curious about the real-world impact. Like, how is this actually making things more secure?
Okay, well, let's take the financial industry, for example.
Okay, thanks.
Right? They're using all of this to protect accounts and prevent fraud.
Makes sense.
You think about all the ways we use our banks online these days.
Yeah, mobile banking apps, websites.
Exactly, and they're using things like multi-factor authentication to verify who we are, analyzing all those transactions for anything suspicious.
Right, to catch the fraudsters.
And making sure that nobody can access accounts without permission.
So it's not just about keeping hackers out. It's also about making sure that even if someone does get in, they can't actually do any damage.
Exactly, it's about layers of protection. And they're also using all of this to make things easier for customers.
Oh, yeah, because nobody wants to deal with a million passwords and security questions.
And that's where adaptive authentication comes in.
Yeah, and single sign-on.
Right, you can log in once and you're good to go.
So it's more secure, but also more convenient.
Exactly, a win-win for everyone.
I like it. What about other industries like healthcare?
Yeah, healthcare is a big one too.
Protecting all that sensitive patient data.
Exactly, and making sure they're complying with all those regulations.
IPA and all that.
They're using things like role-based access control, so only certain people can see certain records.
Makes sense.
They keep track of who's accessing what.
Audit trails.
Right. And they even use biometrics to verify the identities of doctors and nurses.
Wow, so it's like a totally secure environment for patient information.
That's the goal. And all of this can actually improve patient care too.
Really? How so?
Well, think about those wearable devices that monitor patients.
Yeah, I've heard of those.
They can send alerts to doctors if something's wrong.
Oh, wow. So it's like an early warning system.
Exactly. It can help prevent complications and save lives.
That's incredible. So we've got banks using this to prevent fraud, hospitals using it to protect patients. What other examples are there?
Oh, it's everywhere. Retail, e-commerce, education, even the government.
Wow. It really is a part of everything these days.
It is, and as we use technology more and more, it's only going to become more important.
So what's next? What does the future hold for all of this?
Well, I think we'll see even more sophisticated ways to authenticate people. Things like biometrics. But even better than what we have now, AI and behavioral analytics will play a bigger role.
So systems that can really understand how we behave and spot anything unusual.
Exactly. And authorization will become more intelligent too.
Okay.
Adapting to changing risks and situations.
Yeah. So it's like security that's always learning and getting smarter.
Right. And I think we'll also see a lot more focus on privacy.
Yeah, that's important.
It is. We need to make sure that all of this technology is used ethically.
Right. Because it's powerful stuff.
It is, and we need to make sure it's used for good.
So it's not just about making security smarter, it's about making it more ethical.
Exactly, and that takes all of us working together.
Right, technologists, policymakers, everyone needs to be involved.
I agree.
Well, this has been fascinating. I've learned so much.
I'm glad to hear that.
I want to thank you again for taking the time to talk with us.
It was my pleasure.
And to all of our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of authentication and authorization. We hope you found it helpful. And as always, stay curious, stay informed, and stay secure.